welcome. My name is Jules Flores. I am the coordinator for Leadership Inclusion Programs over at the Student Engagement and Leadership Center. I want to thank you all for joining us for today's panel facilitated by our EDGE leaders. So we're very excited to host this amazing and engaging panel for everybody today. So before we start, we just have some virtual space rules. So we encourage the audience to be engaged and actively listening throughout the event. Please make sure you're on mute again and that your videos are disabled so that we can focus on our moderators and our panelists. This is a safe and brave space for everyone. I want you to feel comfortable as brave to speak up. And this is an interactive session, so questions, comments, anything within the chat section is highly encouraged. I just ask that you keep it respectful. We will also have some time at the end for Q&A, but if there's something that resonates with you or you want to make a comment in the chat box, definitely do that. So now with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our amazing moderators for today's panel. So first off, we have Emily, who is a graduate student in the Higher Education Administration program, and she works as a research assistant at the Office of the Provost. She has been an EDGE leader for 3 years. Next, we have Elizabeth Carrion. She is a junior studying education with a concentration of EC 6 generalist. She has been a part of the UTEP EDGE student leaders for 2 years. So with that being said, if you all can please join me in giving them a virtual applause to our moderators. Go ahead and take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that intro, Jules. And thank you all for taking the time to join us this afternoon. So today we will be discussing student experiences and techniques to manage our relationships with others and our relationships with ourselves in this context of social distancing. So we're not experts, but my supervisor brought up the topic of emotional intelligence during our first virtual staff meeting a couple weeks ago. And I felt that this was an important conversation to have with you all. So I invited some students to help us talk about this, and joining us for our conversation today are 2 amazing students, Alejandra Nevares and Daisy Marquez. Ale is a senior majoring in media advertising with a double minor in marketing and psychology, and she works as an undergraduate assistant at the Office of the Provost. And Daisy, hi Daisy, is a senior majoring in organizational and corporate communication with a minor in women's studies. And she also worked as an undergraduate assistant at the Office of the Provost. So thank you for being here today with us. And Liz?
So sorry, I'm having a little trouble on my end, but like Emily mentioned before, we are definitely not experts on this subject, so we thought that we should share an expert's take on this before we start our discussion. We will be sharing a TED Talk with you called The 6 Steps to Improve Your Emotional Intelligence by, sorry if I say the name wrong, Ramona Hacker. This video is just a little bit long, so while it's playing, if you have any thoughts or opinions about something that she says, feel free to go into the chat and go ahead and write it out. We will circle back during our Q&A, and also in the event that you experience technical difficulties with the video, we will have the link in the chat so you can follow along. So we're going to go ahead and start this video.
Be honest with you. Emotional intelligence is not necessarily my main strength. When I make decisions, I base them solely on my rationale. If friends from school hear me do this talk right now, they will be very surprised because back then I didn't even consider emotions as something crucial. They weren't logical, I couldn't explain them very well, so why would I care? I never even actively thought about the topic until 5 years ago when I dropped out of a job because of a burnout. It was then that my very emotional side was revealed. And while I rarely cried before, especially not in front of people, I just couldn't stop the tears from streaming down my face at the most inconvenient of times anymore. Several times a day, I went to the restroom just to hide my suffering. And that made very clear to me that I need to work on this issue. But now what is it, this mysterious emotional intelligence? When most people think of it, they stop at the term emotional. What do you connect to it? I'd say it has a bad connotation, describing a person having or expressing strong feelings. And this connotation is also then there for emotional intelligence, a misconception that I had as well. However, it's crucial to differentiate between emotional and the value that emotional intelligence can have. Because emotional intelligence is something fundamentally different. It's the ability to identify and manage your emotions and those of others. And it's said to include 3 skills. First, emotional awareness, so empathy towards others, but also towards yourself. Second, the ability to harness emotions and apply them to tasks like problem solving. And third, the ability to manage emotions, which includes regulating your own emotions, but also calming down or cheering up other people. As you can clearly see by this contrast, very emotional people do not necessarily or automatically have a high emotional intelligence, because they may only display their emotions freely without thinking about or knowing why they have them, and maybe not even considering the appropriateness of showing them in the respective situation. Now, lacking emotional intelligence as a kid or teenager meant for me that I would channel things like loneliness or fear, sometimes into aggression. My family background, well, let's say, is improvable. So instead of finding the support that I'd need, I'd rather get it on the basis of, oh, don't be such a crybaby, than anything else. My parents didn't teach me the value of emotions. Therefore, losing friends or breakups would hit me harder than many others, because I could neither fully understand my emotions nor those of the others. They just didn't make sense. I thought, I'm not supposed to feel that way, because I've never learned how to deal with emotions. And with time passing, I realized I'm just one of many people having this issue. Have you ever thought about why people judge or bully each other? Be it kids, or at work, or even in toxic friendships or relationships. And it can be anything, ranging from sexism to racism. It's because of insecurity due to a lack of emotional intelligence, because it's hard to understand the difference between yourself and someone else. And it's even harder to connect on an emotional level to truly comprehend where someone else is coming from. And in order to change that, we first of all need to consider emotional intelligence as a crucial skill in our society, and then also take the time to consciously work on it. Currently, we do neither. And we also don't give our kids, for example, the space to learn the skill. Kids nowadays, they are supposed to be good in school, do sports, play an instrument, learn a foreign language, and maybe even some additional things. They don't get the chance to get to know who they are, connect to themselves and to their emotions. And a fundamental part of being emotionally intelligent means knowing who you are. And for them to learn, we also need to learn it ourselves to be the role model that they need. Now you might be thinking, yeah, sure, but how do we approach this topic individually, but also as a society? And basically, it comes down to what everything comes down to. We need to learn a new skill. So when you learn a new skill, you first of all need to become aware of your incompetence in the field. So I got there with my burnout. I'm pretty sure that you can manage that more easily. And then you work on the skill until you manage it to the level that you want. And after a while, you will even be able to apply it without actively thinking about it. Take, for example, your driver's license. After a while, you stop thinking, oh, I need to put in the next gear. You just do so. Unconscious competence achieved. Now, the trickiest thing, though, is to get from conscious incompetence to conscious competence. And we do that by learning the basics of how a car works and by practicing. So in the beginning, it's maybe difficult to steer the wheel at the same time as putting in the next gear, but after a while, it gets easier. And with emotional intelligence, it's basically the same thing. So I tried to compile my experiences and came up with a 6-step guide that hopefully helps people to get more emotionally intelligent. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to acknowledge our emotions. But not only as such, but as something valuable, because that's what they are. According to research by Antonio Damasio, people whose brain parts that are responsible for emotions have been damaged found themselves even having a harder time taking rational decisions. That's how valuable they are. And the very first small but simple thing that you can do is you can ask people with genuine interest how they are feeling. And when you're asked, answer with authenticity. When you feel good, but also when you feel bad. So no, I'm fine, but also no complaining. Instead of complaining about your colleagues, say, I don't feel appreciated at work, or whatever it comes down to. Make it an I message. And when people show emotions, tell them that it's okay to have those. Talk about them. Erase the taboo that I feel exists in our society of talking about emotions, because that's more often than not the one thing that keeps us from making the next step. And the next step is differentiating and analyzing emotions. So sometimes when we talk about or express a feeling, we substitute the original one with one that we think we know better or are better at handling. But there are actually a lot of different emotions, and all of them have their functions. And all of them might also need you to handle them differently. Therefore, it's important to get down to the core. And then you also need to accept and appreciate all those emotions. Because emotions are neither good nor bad. They just gain connotation through society. Take, for example, grieving or sadness. Why do we so desperately try to cut it out of our lives? Because actually, it's just a very beautiful illustration of the appreciation that we have for someone or something. Now, I approach all 3 steps by writing my emotions down in a journal just for that. On need basis, so not necessarily daily, but sometimes only every few weeks, or maybe even only every few months. Friends of mine do similar things with apps if you want to be more modern. And then there is the next step, reflecting on your emotions and their origin. Because sometimes just knowing why we feel the way you do already helps us handle the feeling. Again, for me, covered when I write them down, because it gives me time to actively think about them. And then you get to handling your emotions, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? And as said, reflecting might already suffice, but it might not. And you may still need to find your way on how to handle your emotions. because there is more than one way to skin a cat, and I can only give you a few examples of what I did. And what helped me, if not handle the emotion, but at least find out how to handle it, was writing it down, because it put distance between me and my emotions. There has even been a study conducted on the positive effects of written expression of emotions by Pennebaker and Smith, and they published it in their book, Opening Up by Writing It Down, if you want to check it out. Because that's actually another thing that I do. I read on the topic. Currently, I'm reading Language of Emotions by Carla McLaren. Literally any book by Brené Brown is good to go, but there are so many more. And I talk to friends. I ask them, how do you approach this situation? How do you approach that topic or this emotion? And then it's more or less a trial and error principle. Sometimes it may be sports, sometimes it may be meditation. It's just important that you find your individual way. And then handling the emotions of others. And I'd say as soon as you mastered your emotions, but also in the process of getting better at it, you will find it easier and easier to also handle the emotions of others because you have a different understanding. And understanding and awareness are the keys. It gets even easier because you can simply ask the other person how you can support them, because they might know. Or you can also ask them how they can support themselves. Because that way, you not only help them in the acute situation, but you actually help them develop their emotional intelligence. And then, when we have a few people being emotionally intelligent, we also need to think about how can we teach our next generation. And as a society, I feel the most important thing that we need to do is implement emotional education in school. Teach children about the different emotions and their functions. Give them a space to openly talk about them so that they can acknowledge their emotions. Help them to accept and appreciate them. To be honest, it's not that difficult. Most of the things that I mentioned can be easily put into practice in schools. I mean, how many books have you read in school? Why not make some of them about emotional intelligence? Or make kids work on case studies together so that they can exchange their ideas on how to approach topics. And if we're lucky, they get out of school having learned this fundamental and crucial skill of emotional intelligence. Imagine the world that we would be living in. If every one of us was emotionally intelligent, what do you think would change? Being emotionally intelligent means knowing and understanding yourself. Thus, it helps you make better decisions. It would spare us from emotional suffering because we know where it comes from and we know how to handle it, and maybe not even impose it upon others. It would help us deal with interpersonal relationships because we also connect on a different level. And interpersonal relationships are everywhere. Just think about it. What would it mean to have an emotionally intelligent boss? Or what would it mean to have an emotionally intelligent parent? If we were all emotionally intelligent, how would we approach differences? Or how would we approach topics like mental health? Or how would we approach conflicts? Just imagine the world that we would be living in. A world full of mutual.
Alrighty, so we did have a few people answering in our chat, so we're going to go ahead and react to some of these. If you guys want to go ahead and chime in, Emily, Daisy, and Ale. So the first thing that we got was from mostly all of our participants was that that it can be extremely difficult for us to understand what others are feeling and going through, just because like we don't we don't understand, like, on a personal level, I guess, how they feel. So anybody want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, we don't know what's going on in people's heads, but maybe if they tell us, or if we maybe notice something's off, then maybe we ask appropriately, of course, and in the right moment. And that's what we will be getting into during this conversation. Were there any other comments made from the audience?
Yes, we did have someone say that at their church young adult leadership group that they do use the emotion wheel to identify how they're feeling. So the wheel that we did see in the video, they do use that.
That's awesome.
Oh, awesome. That's good. That's really good.
And I think going back to the whole idea of not really knowing, again, I'm no expert either, but at least in my own personal experience, acknowledging your own emotions first and acknowledging that we go through a variety of them, it makes it a little bit easier to understand other people, because you're not just automatically assuming that what they're feeling is who they are. Like, if they're feeling angry, that doesn't mean that they're an angry person. And I think we'll get into this as well later. But first, it's really doing that deep thought process on your own of like, what is this feeling? Where is it coming from? Yeah. But those are good comments.
Yeah.
We also had another comment. It says, I think it's pretty essential to acknowledge feelings, not only our feelings, but from others as well. We really have no idea what other person is going through, just as how they do not know what we are going through. But by doing this, we can all little by little become more mindful of everyone around us and more mindful of ourselves as well. When we do that, then we are able to start the process of emotional intelligence and allow others to start their own process at their own pace too.
Exactly. That is a really good point, for sure. Snaps.
Snaps.
We also have the comment of attending higher learning can also make us more aware of each other's emotions.
Yeah, for sure. There are some courses or events in institutions of higher learning that may not be available in high school, or maybe elementary, or even earlier, even with family. So yeah, I agree with that for sure. Okay, so let's talk to Ale and Daisy. Hi, guys.
Hey. Hi.
So I have my first question to you is, how have these past couple weeks of social distancing affected you personally?
I can go first. So personally, one of my love languages is that I appreciate like physical touch and like affection and just like social interaction. I thrive from it. So just getting this type of interaction with others through Zoom, just like it fills my soul. So it's definitely been very difficult to navigate. I'm working on my last semester of undergrad, and so just having to switch everything, having all these ideas of how my end of the semester would look like, and then having to come to terms with it and be like, okay, that's not going to happen anymore, but we have health, we have a home, we have all of this to be thankful for, but still trying to understand that like my feelings are valid, and the fact that there's an abrupt change makes me feel sad and makes me feel very stressed out. I definitely allowed myself some time to I gave myself a good cry. And I didn't feel anything for, I guess, the first 2 weeks. I would compare it to being numb. I was just like, oh, here I am working, trying to get my work together. And then I finally gave myself a good cry. And then it made me feel better. It made me feel like I acknowledged my own emotions, so therefore I was able to go through with them, essentially. But that's kind of how it's been for me. It's a lot easier now, but there's still those off days, but that's okay.
It's totally okay.
How about you,
And
Ellie?
going off of Daisy, I mean, everything that you said is just everything that I feel. Also, it's been a roller coaster of emotions, a time of questioning, introspection, and much reflection. I was in DC for the semester, but unfortunately my program got cut short. So imagine me mentally preparing for a 5-month program, when in reality I was back home in 3 months. So I was not ready to say bye to the experience. I was nowhere expecting to come back home so early. Sure, I knew it was gonna end sometime, but I like to believe that I still had the time to do many things that I had arranged for and that I had planned for while over there in DC. Um, it's been an adjustment to be back home with my family, because even in regular semesters, I live on campus. So I would only come back home during the weekend. So I would not be here 24/7 with them. So it's definitely been a change, and it's definitely been, like a reconfiguring of my own personal space, my independence. I would, like, in my apartment, I would just go out and not have to tell anybody where I was going. But here it's like everywhere I go, even if it's just the restroom, I have to tell my family, which is fine. I don't mind it at all. But it's those things that we give for granted, and now that we don't have them, like, I do miss them at some point. But however, social distancing has given me a light on the privilege that I have, and I'm sure all of you can agree with this as well. Food has been on my table every day. The other day that it rained, like, I had a roof to go to that would protect me. A car that takes me to the grocery store. I mean, there's so much that I have, and I'm so grateful for. But of course, we do have feelings, and of course, I still feel sad that I had to leave DC so soon. And I feel so sad because all the 48 students that I was sharing my semester with, that I thought I would have more time with them, it was just cut short. So just kind of like reinventing myself into a time that I didn't know I would have, which is now, and I have an abundance of time. So I've been taking care of myself, prioritizing myself, doing things that I did not have time for before. And now I have all the time in the world. So I've been just trying to prioritize myself over anything and everything. And then trying to reconnect with my family at some point, because I was not here.
Yeah, and thank you, Ale. And that's a really good segue into my next question, which is, how has social distancing affected your relationships with your friends, your family, significant others, or your colleagues? Either of you could take this question.
Well,
I can take it on. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead, Daisy. Go ahead. Okay. I mean, what made it fun and worth it, being on campus, being at work, is just being able to be with someone, knowing that someone else was in the presence with you, waiting for my best friend who just worked next to me, and going to our classes together, having lunch together. And just like in a matter of texting, he would be outside waiting for me, or just like getting lost for those little coffee breaks and just getting to talk to everyone in the office, which is totally made my day, because sometimes they would be just so great because of school, because of work, because of whatever. And just like talking to someone made the difference. In DC, when I was in DC, I would send my roommates here and my best friend and my family postcards. And now that I'm back, I continue to do so, because I just want to remind them of how present they are in my life, even though that we are here in the same city. Like, I just continue to do that because I thought that was just something really sweet and something neat. And it's funny because my best friend and I FaceTime each other more now that we cannot see each other than we would so before this. Even just like, how is your day? It doesn't have to be like a 30-minute conversation. It just has to be like a 5-minute tea spill in which I tell them everything that happened during my day. It's been a really great time to be creative about how we choose to connect with others. And I feel like these have been my ways of connecting.
Nice. Thank you for sharing, Ale. I definitely have had the beginning of this whole transition was rough. Because again, I think this is a conversation that I was having with one of our other coworkers. And so usually a lot of people go to work, and what makes it fun is that social interaction with either your coworkers, your bosses. There's just that interaction that you get to talk about little bits of your life that is happening at the moment. Like, oh, today I had to walk so much, or today the wind was blowing in my face and it made my eyes cry, which would happen all the time going to work. We kind of got stripped away from that social interaction, and we're social creatures. And so it was obviously okay to have it like affect us in this way. And nobody really knows how to process it correctly. In regards to my relationships, right before we went into shutdown, my sister and I went over to my grandma's house so that we can fill up her pantry just to make sure she had food. And the saying goodbye part was so weird because we knew that it was the last time we were going to hug her. We knew that it was the last time that we would see her for a little while. And just that uncertainty makes me feel so uncomfortable because I'm that type of person that likes to know what's going on, how much time am I going to take to do this. It gives me a sense of security. And so definitely we've been celebrating birthdays through Zoom. For my niece's first birthday, it was through Zoom, and it was sad, but it was also kind of beautiful. Just to see everybody in this like Zoom space has been very nice. And with my parents, it's so interesting to be here all the time. Because I was never home. I was always at school. I was always doing something. And so just being home all the time is interesting. But I think we've allowed ourselves what I've noticed is that we gather and then we give each other space. And I think it's worked out well because nobody's like all up in their business. Everybody has their own room, and it works out just fine. I don't know. I guess that's my little driving. Oh, I joke with my mom sometimes when I'm going to work. I'm like, okay, Mom, I'm going to go to work. I'll text you when I get there. Because I or just to keep that sense of normalcy. But yeah, that's how it's been interesting having to get in touch with people that I didn't talk to before as much, like friends, just being like, hey, how are you? How's it going? But I also understand that it's not like, I need to be okay with myself in order to ask for other people how they're doing. Because if they do share, I want to be ready in an emotional like space to answer the question, answer whatever they're trying to tell me. But like also understand that we have no obligation to do so because everybody's in their headspace. And if your headspace doesn't allow you to reach out to somebody to ask how they're doing, that's fine. You help yourself first mentally so that you can help others. At least that's the way that I kind of been seeing this.
Yeah, for sure. Because if you don't have water in your bucket, how are you going to put it in someone else's, right?
Exactly.
Liz, do you have a question for our audience?
I do. So we're going to go ahead and give our audience a little bit of a chance to kind of get their thoughts out. One of the questions that we do have for our audience is, do you think emotional intelligence is crucial for leadership? And if you do, why or why not? So I'm going to also post that in the chat so that way you don't have to wonder, like, what did she say again? And we're going to go ahead and also allow you guys time to type, and we'll allow some more questions for our panelists.
Yeah, so while you all are answering that question, do you think emotional intelligence is crucial for leadership? Why or why not? I'll go on and ask Ale and Daisy another question about the role of communication. So, how has communication played a role with how you interact with others? Since we're not face-to-face anymore, have you been more mindful of your tone via email? And why is being mindful of our written communication more important now than it was before?
So I guess I can speak because Ale and I and Emily work in the same office. We were always taught the importance of sending emails and making sure that they were always delivered in a positive manner, because most of the time we would be asking people to do things. And so you need to phrase it very well. Our boss also said that what did he say? Be cognizant of the way that you were giving your message? Like, what is the package looking like? Is the package looking like you're angry? Is the package looking like you're, I don't know how to explain it. And if you guys remember it a little bit more, please chime in. But it's so important the way that you deliver the message, because at this point, if you deliver the message in a positive way, what's actually the heart of the content, people will be able to accept it a little bit better. And so because of that, we've kind of been trained for that. But at least now it's a little bit different, because the beginning of the text is like, hope all is well. But now it's changed to, I hope you and your family are staying safe. Or we hope that this transition has been easy on you and your family. And that's not really something that we were taught to do before. Before it was just like, nice, and then straight to business. And now I feel like we've created this space to actually add in, like, I hope your family is okay. I hope your mental your sanity is fine. But I've definitely seen a change, and I've been a lot more cognizant in the way that I deliver my messages now than I did before.
Right. So I remember that conversation we had with our boss. So he said, it doesn't matter what was in the message, it won't be received if it was sent with a tone that was off. Like if it was sent angrily or annoyingly, like whatever it was that was in the message, whether it was really crucial, it's not going to be received. So yeah, that was the point that Daisy was making. Yeah, for sure.
That's a great point he made.
For sure. What about you, Ale?
I mean, I was thinking about a lot of the non-verbal communications aspects that we're not able to deliver because of this constraint of social distancing and stuff. So, I mean, everything that we do right now is either to Microsoft Teams, through Zoom, emails. We rely on these messages, written messages, to ensure productivity, our connection, and just keep going the way we have been even through this pandemic. So I agree with everything that you both are saying. And I mean, just to make it clear, or just like to emphasize that we need to be extremely mindful, even in these times, of how we say things, how we word them, other factors like tone and punctuation, grammar, everything is being received, and the way that you package it, just like Stacy said, and our boss said, he's amazing. It's just the way that your message is going to be received. So, I mean, it's been a lot of learning how to say things in a more, peaceful manner, but still getting things done. I'm still working for my internship remotely, so it's, me working with DC, and it's just been a lot of, different factors that go into this, but we have been amazing at communicating with each other, letting each other know that, this has been too much for us, so we need a little bit of time to get back to ourselves and just figure out what's going on. But just to ensure that productivity, we have to be able to speak our minds respectfully and mindful of each other's emotions.
Right. Because you never know, like, again, putting in yourself in other people's shoes, we never truly know. And so you don't know if, like, the message that you send out that has a little joke, just kidding, no, not a joke, but like a very nice message that seems genuine, you never know if that might make somebody's day, if they're having just a terrible day, or if they're already having a terrible day, if you say, please get this done, turn it in as soon or ASAP. I mean, that can either make or break somebody. And I think it's important to know that it might be a little dramatic, but it's up to that point, because you truly don't know what people are going through, especially within isolation. So it's definitely has been more of putting in a little bit of extra work into the way our message is being conveyed. But I think it's definitely worth it.
Such good insight, y'all. Such good insight. Liz, what's our audience saying?
So due to time, we are only going to read two. One of the comments comes from Antonio. So thank you so much for putting in your input. He says, leaders know how to handle situations properly and in ways that are best for others. Emotional intelligence helps to connect with yourself and others. See other perspectives and learn how to work together. Leaders are those who actually care.
Period.
Snaps. Snaps.
Thank you, Antonio, for that.
And then another one comes from Anna, and they say, EQ is crucial for leadership. I am president of a pharmacy organization. Allocating and entrusting responsibilities to other leaders got overwhelming. I had to remember that their lives all look different, and we had to have talks at different times to see when they could get responsibilities done because of academic or personal challenges.
Yes.
Awesome. That's really good. Thank y'all for sharing. Great from the audience. All right, so in the video, Ramona Hacker mentions talking to friends and being honest when people ask you how you're doing. So Alan, Daisy, why do you think it's important to check in with each other, like your friends or your colleagues, family? Why is it important to check in?
I mean, first of all, and I think the most important thing is to remember that we are social distancing, we're not socially distant. So just a nice text saying, hey, how are you? Like a genuine text is gonna be, how do you say it? It's gonna be personalized to that person. Like if you remember that person was working on something before you all went into social distancing, maybe it's just like a text, how's your project going? How's your new dog going? How's your new niece doing? Just like stuff like that can definitely make the difference in these times. And I'm pretty sure like everyone right now is just trying to figure out themselves, but just like a small little message in a day can make the difference in someone's lives. So a friend that you have not seen maybe since like last year, it might be a good time to just reach out and genuinely ask how they're doing.
I believe this goes into the conversation that we had yesterday, in the fact that like before we would ask like how you're doing, hey, how you doing? And then everybody would respond, fine, okay, I'm doing great, and then carry on to the conversation. But most people will go back and be like, I actually am not doing that great today. But I feel like before it was very like, we're in business, we need to get it together, we need to carry on, like be courteous at the fact that you're asking people how they're doing, but people aren't really expecting for you to answer more than fine, because it's going to take more time. Nowadays, I feel like it's a little bit more important, and people should take every response that we get. An example that I see is that in the meetings that I have with faculty members or staff members, in the beginning, we would ask, hi, how's everyone doing? And everybody would be like, fine, fine. Now it's more like, today's rough, we're here, but we got to get work done. Today, a lot of people, because a lot of them are parents and are having to teach and are having to work and are having to feed. So now at least it's a little bit okay to have people say, I'm not fine, but that's okay. I'll carry on, or I'm not fine. And only sometimes will people feel like courageous or safe enough to ask like for help. If they feel like they're comfortable enough with that person or something like that. But yeah, I've definitely seen that difference in communication, in the way that we ask, hi, how are you? And then now it's more like, I'm struggling, but I'm carrying on. Yeah.
You brought up a good point there, Daisy, that leads us into our next question about help. So if someone isn't comfortable asking for help, how do you recognize when they need it, but they haven't told you yet? It could be uncomfortable, but what are some common signs that it's time to offer someone some help?
I think going back to what I mentioned in the very beginning of understanding your own emotions and the way that you express them and the way that you interact. I feel like the more you get to know somebody, you'll kind of pick up on some few quirks on like a little slight comment that they mentioned. And it just depends on how carefully you're listening, how actively you're listening. I think it truly depends on the person and the person's personality. But some things, like some people would either separate themselves from everybody. They won't talk to anybody. They won't use social media as an outlet to express themselves. If you see that there's a change in that, I feel like a little text message would go a long way. But also establishing the fact that like if you feel comfortable doing so, because we have like, I also believe in like energy, and like if somebody has the heavy energy that they're feeling, they're definitely, you're going to feel it. At least I feel it. If another person is going through something else, then I'll definitely feel that energy. And I need to make sure that I'm in a place strong enough to at least provide a space where they can talk about it and where it won't affect me in a harsher way. If I'm going through something already and then somebody else adds on what they're going through, then it might take a little bit of stronger toll on me. But definitely just explaining and stating that you are a person that is open to have that safe space. I like a safe space person. And some people would just automatically like attract to you in not a romantic way, but in a way that like people just feel comfortable to share what they're going through. I mean, it's very different, but it's definitely been a process where I've managed my own emotional intelligence, kept on working on it so that I can pick up on social cues on others, especially if I know them, especially if they're family members, romantic partners, or anything like that. Just being actively aware of what they're going through, their social cues. Yeah.
So I want to ask y'all one last question. So what are some things that you have been doing personally that have helped you improve your state of mind during this time?
So my best friend gifted me the Harry Potter books a year ago, and I had not had the time to read them the way I would have wanted to. And as soon as I got back home from DC, I looked at my books and I was like, okay, I have time for you now. So I'm on book 3. I'm so excited. So surely we'll get there. Also, I've been getting a lot into skincare. So TikTok made me, like, oh, maybe I can try this product. Maybe I can try the other one. So a lot of skincare routines and self-care. I tried picking up cooking, but that did not work. Baking, I mean. So I've been doing a lot of cooking instead. I found that cooking is really a way for me to like de-stress and just kind of like follow a recipe or not follow a recipe, just kind of like, have my time in the kitchen. And also just going outside and going for walks with my dogs, because I'm pretty sure they need them too. So that's how I've been taking care of myself in these times.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. What have you been doing, Daisy?
What have I been doing? So in the beginning, everybody was like, yeah, you need to work out, blah, blah, blah. And the only reason that I did try to work out a little bit was just because I was sitting down all day and my legs needed to move. It was not for weight loss. It was not for anything like that. It was also a time for me to just go outside and just get some sun on my face because I'm in this room all day. But I actually stopped working out because I didn't know how to balance working out, schoolwork. I never did in the beginning before we even got into this pandemic, into this situation. And so I actually stopped working out, but I know that now that school's done, I want to do it a little bit. I also got this plant. I was mentioning this before. This is Benito. I do not have a green thumb. I killed my last succulent. But it makes me happy just having it next to me, and I just try to look up ways to help it stay alive. We'll see how that goes. And I love makeup. I love just putting on like bright colors, and so whenever I do have the time to do so, I just have a nice time for myself where I like take my time forever to do my makeup and just de-stress. That's like the way that I like to express myself. And Zoom dates and like having movie dates on Zoom has been a new thing for me. So that's how I've been managing.
Well, thank y'all for sharing, and thank you for your really candid and really insightful answers. So for our audience, we have some tips and resources that we wanted to share with you. So right now, one of the things from the video was that you could journal your emotions to be able to analyze and reflect on them. That's one thing you can do. She also mentioned using I feel statements or I statements instead of stating complaints about your coworkers or your bosses or whatever. It's like, I feel underappreciated, or I feel this or that. And then that can go into your journaling as well. And then it'll help you analyze and work through those emotions. And then also number 3, do something that makes you happy. Spend some time on your hobbies. Like Alice she's doing a little cooking and some reading. Get yourself into something that you like. Maybe you'll figure out something new that you like and you didn't do before. So yeah, use this time to do something that makes you happy. And then be mindful of your written communication because it matters so much. I've been putting more exclamation marks now in my emails than I did before. So that's one little thing. And then your sign-offs, make them super friendly because you never know how the next person will be receiving them or what state of mind they're in at the point they receive your email. So always make them super friendly and really helpful. And then be honest with yourself and others about how you're feeling. So if somebody asks you how you're doing, answer honestly. And I feel like people are asking now more because they care and not just to fill in conversation, right? So if they ask you to answer honestly, I guess read the room, right?
Yeah.
Too, and because you can decide how much you want to share. You don't have to spill your guts or anything.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to spill your guts to someone that you don't really know like that. Gauge it.
Yeah.
And then my last tip is to read. She mentions that there's so many books and online resources that you can use. I have personally been using this one, the Emotional Intelligence Pocketbook by Gil Hassan, and it has like a bunch of different strategies and ways of managing and to build your emotional intelligence and things like that. So yeah, read good books, online resources, just do a little research and see what you can do. So for our audience, thank you all so much for joining us today. Jules, did you want to say something?
Yes, no, thank you all so much. If we all could give them another digital applause for our amazing panelists and moderators. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. We are running out of time. We don't have too much time for Q&A. But if there is a question that you're burning to ask, I don't want you to feel like you can't ask it. So I'm going to put in my email in the chat box. Feel free to send it to me, and then I could share it with the panelists and our moderators, and we can get you an email response. So give me a second. But with that being said, no, thank you all so much for sharing your insight, the video. I feel like this conversation was very needed, especially with what everyone's going through right now. Just being mindful of what the tone is that we set when we're sending those emails, text messages. I know that for me personally, there's just so much more to do when working from home. So I try to be mindful of like when I send something in a hurry, because I'm just trying to check off my checklist. So I think that's really important to keep in mind as we continue, whether you're finishing up the semester, starting classes again in the summer. Just be mindful of checking in with each other, asking, being honest with how you're feeling. And these are all really great tips and things to keep in mind from here on out. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Edgar to go ahead and close it out. But I will leave my email over here in the chat box. So if you have a question that you're wanting to ask, feel free to send it to me and I can relay that to our panelist and moderator. But Edgar, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Hi, y'all. I apologize. My video seems to have stopped working halfway through the panel, so I do apologize. But my name is Edgar. As Ms. Jules mentioned, I am the intern for Inclusion and Advocacy Programs. I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists. It was a great, much-needed discussion. I know that You know, definitely, I was writing some tips as y'all were talking, so I appreciate that and appreciate y'all for sharing, as well as your audience members. It was incredibly insightful. I encourage you all to join us for the remaining of our Minors on Monitors page for more online programs. Some programs focus on self-care, national holidays, amongst other things. Lastly, don't forget to follow the social media. Follow the Student Engagement and Leadership Center on our social media. I apologize. Our handle is at UTEP SELC for more online engagement activities. That being said, again, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to our EDGE leaders who did an incredible job at moderating and answering and sharing some tips. I wish you all to be safe, and y'all have a good rest of your afternoon. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.